शो एट RTV. RTV में सभी का स्वागत है. In today's program, in today's interview, एक कलाकार, we have today with us an eminent artist from Hyderabad, Dr. Preeti Samyukta Bhatt, who is known for her intelligent paintings. And today in this interview, let us know more about her thought process, her path traveled, her experiences, and what she has to say about her paintings and her concept. A warm welcome, Dr. Preeti Samyukta Bhatt, to RTV.
Good morning and namaste to all.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Preeti, you're based in Hyderabad. You're born, brought up, and based in Hyderabad. This thing. Could you please tell us something about yourself, your path traveled, your experiences in this field of art?
Okay. Good morning to everyone, my art friends, colleagues, students, and everyone across the globe. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So it's just like this. When you come from an artistic background, sometimes you choose art, you choose music, you choose something creative, and sometimes it is also that if you have parents who are into a different field, also you tend to become something creative. So it's somewhere there in the line. My dad was a poet. He's a poet, in fact, a writer in Kannada. And my mom used to sing classical vocal, although she stopped after marriage. But then that streak of creativity always lied inside me. I was also interested in science. So that was what it was. And then it's after 10th standard that, my father put me into art. He always took me to this library where the campus where we stayed had a very beautiful library, a well-equipped library with good books. And so he took me there. And then that was a time when I saw Picasso's Cubist three musician work. And that, is it's still there in my mind because I was in 5th grade when I saw that work. And that's how it started. A little later, I got into music myself and stopped music, but got into art and joined an art college. Did my master's degree from Hyderabad Central University. Then went on to do my PhD, which happened after a long gap, although. But then I was into this art and drawing and music and so many reading, writing. So I do all this. I think it's also with the atmosphere that I grew in. So that's the little journey. Yeah.
Excellent. So you have a very strong base, a strong background, a strong encouragement in terms of arts, in terms of your exploratory intelligence, you can say, because what I see is that like science and mathematics can give you logic intelligence, whereas subjects like art, literature, poetry, philosophy, these enhance your exploratory intelligence. So you had somewhat had an inclination both towards the logic intelligence when you say science, and at the same time, because your father was a poet, he took you to the library, he took you to reading and put you more sort of exposed you more towards the exploratory intelligence also, you say. How do you find these two intelligences working for you today?
Well, actually, if you see, interestingly, my love for science, for insects, and for those for flora, fauna, you can see in my work. I remember growing up in the wilderness. So that is one aspect when it is nature. Okay, we all as artists copy nature. Nature is the
mother inspiration.
It's a mother, yeah. So if we are not creators, actually, we are the second creators. So when it comes to science, if you ask me that in detail, logic thinking, I wouldn't go into, but a scientist or an agriculturist would always, deal with plants or for that matter, a veterinary doctor with animals. So that probably was some kind of desire to get into that, but not focused. But then if you look at my interest in science, it is about plants. It's about insects. It's about these creatures that have been extinct. And then although, you don't find it today in this concreteness, in India at least, my vocabulary, visual vocabulary that I use in the art is all my nostalgic, the nostalgia that I create to show people that, see, this is the place that I was, or these are the elements you remember. See, when you see someone's painting, you go back. So in the
True.
same way, I would want someone to look at my the dragonflies I use in my work, or the monkeys I use in my work. Monkeys today you see it everywhere, but dragonflies, where you don't see them at all, because dragonflies are in that wilderness. And today's
Correct.
children don't know different kinds of dragonflies. You have the
Correct.
pencil dragonflies, the bigger one that people call as helicopter and all that. So
Correct.
those things are so much there in my work. So someone looks at my work, they say, wow, this is, so they go back into that nostalgia. So science related to art is this somehow, that inner desire always is there in the canvas. So it is not apart from every artist is that what they are on the canvas. So it's nothing separate. It's understood and obvious. So my desire to probably have been an agricultural scientist or something is a kind of love for nature. See, everyone loves nature. There's not a person who says I don't love. Everyone has some kind of input in their house, like plants, indoor plants, and also, so what is it? It's just the love for nature, the greenery. When you're in the concreteness, you want the concreteness, you also want nature. So everything is not possible, so people try to inculcate that little thing in their houses and the surrounding. But now mine has gone a little further by putting it all in the canvas. There's no other way, because I love jungle, I also love the urban space. So it's a kind of a desire to be in both spaces.
Okay.
And love both subjects.
Yes. When I do agree with this, because when I see your paintings, it's like the huge exploration of nature's elements. Now, coming back to your visual language, I will come back to that later on again, because I need to discuss with you few specific points on that. But before coming to that, one of the most interesting aspect of your paintings that I see is that they are more sort of your self-portraits. It's like all face series, and when you see that face, you come to know, okay, this is Preeti somewhere. Okay. Now, many artists have explored self-portraits, but very few have ended up, or very few have worked as a body of work. They have explored their physical, their cultural, their emotional, or their psychological aspects, or their experiences. Now, can you throw some light on this concept of yours? How you explore, and why do you explore your self-portraits? What's so interesting about it?
So it is not just something that happened in a day, of an idea which came up to me just suddenly that let's do a self-portrait. No. There was a time when I was a very protected child. For all fathers, daughters are very protected. So when I had started going to Hyderabad Central University, I started taking the bus. So when I love observing people, their faces, their body language, their behavior, walking style, hairstyle, this and all that. So when I sat in the bus, I started looking at people's hairstyle and their features and all that. So that thing went on to make me draw a lot of faces. And the place that I was studying in was Hyderabad Central University, which took lots of people from Nagaland, Goa, Chennai, and different other states. So every state has their own kind of faces, Goans would look a little different. A Tamilian would look, that's how you see, that's how sometimes you say, are you a Tamilian? You're a Bengali. Many people think I'm a Bengali. It is because of features of the face, a kind of nose structure or lips or eyes or something like that. So I started doing a lot of lithography. Lithography was something that I just loved. I think I should be proud to say I've done around 275 lithographies being a painting student.
Excellent.
People thought I was a printmaker, but I did a lot of lithography because it gave me a lot of kind of freedom and all that. So what happened was that during this period, I had my guru Lakshma Gaud, Padma Shri Lakshma Gaud. He came up to me and said, see, you are looking at everyone's faces and doing a lot of bold work and all, very great. But what is it that you are not looking at yourself? Because as you get up in the morning, you look at your face, you look like this, you put your face like this, see if there's a pimple, or see there's a extra growth of hair, or see if there's something on your nose, or some if
Correct.
the morning you see your face.
Very
So then
minute observations. Yeah.
yeah, so what a person does now, when you're talking about selfie also, it is our face that we're looking at, it's nothing else. So the word selfie also has come with that kind of a thing, self-portrait.
Yeah.
So I started looking at my face and thought that, okay, my nostrils look more than the others. People, their the nostrils are covered a little because of the nose structure being different. Whereas my nostrils, you can make out now if you see my face. So I started looking at my lips, I started looking at my eyes, and I started making a little slight exaggeration of it. But when you see most of my portraits, I started working on portraits because of the reason that my guru had told me that you're looking at everyone fine, but look at yourself also. So that's how slowly after master's degree, I started working on my own face. That's how this thing came.
And how was the experience exploring your own self, be it like the physical aspect of it, or the emotional aspect of it, or and how could you combine these two aesthetically, visually, artistically?
Yeah, so I love color, and I also don't love too much color. So there are two
Okay.
people inside me. So it again depends on what medium I'm working. If I'm doing a pen and ink work, then it's just black and white work. It's not color. I don't want interference of color. I find it a big interference when I do a rotring drawing with lot of rendering and all that. That comes a little bit from the etching and the lithography experience I had. So when I'm doing a large paper, full imperial size paper with my portrait and rendering with rotring, then I don't want any color on that. Maybe gold foil I would stick here and there. That is very interesting, black and gold. But when it comes to a canvas, I would always love vibrant colors, because somewhere inside me, I also love lots of loud color. Today, we don't use the word gaudy anymore. Once upon a time, when I was a student, people said, no neons. Neons I only use by commercial painters because that has to attract the customers and consumers and all that. But today, everyone's using everything, neon, everything. So I love color when it comes to canvas. And then I love a lot of decoration. But I also love bold work. I do a lot of bold work, bold portraiture. And they sometimes resemble me. Sometimes I feel that they're resembling me, but they might not. But then I try to capture my nose, especially my nostril, and then my lips, and somewhere my eyes. So somehow, even if their portraits are so different, people keep saying that I think there is something of you inside here. So this has come with this kind of an attitude towards doing a lot of yourself. So that somehow automatically comes. I have been doing a lot of these drawings and all that. So even if the portraitor thoda hatke jayega, to bhi preeti aa jayegi usme. That comes, preeti is there. So it's like I would call it a kind of a visual autobiography, or visually making a diary. It's my diary actually.
Excellent.
So you have your own, when you're writing a diary, you have your way of writing it. You have your own vocabulary. You have your own dialogues so the way your experience is there written in your words. So my painting is the way I want to see myself there, and myself I am there with flora, fauna. Nowadays you have Ajanta pictures, because I also teach in the college. So there's a lot of Ajanta coming in. And my college I belong to was a part of Ahmedabad, or rather Ahmedabad was a part of Hyderabad once upon a time. So the teachers, the founder teachers who founded my art college, or the college that I'm teaching in, has a lot of Ajanta. So lots of Ajanta every day. So somehow that has also come now inside my painting. Probably I have become a little more decorative. I don't mind, because I'm also bold. I also do a lot of drawing. So everything is fine actually, as long as I am actually putting myself there and I'm satisfied.
Yeah. I would agree with this point of yours, because you are like that singing bird who simply expresses itself. That's it. It's like, you're not bothered whether someone has what anyone would think, or what would be their things. You're not there to impress someone. You are simply to express yourself and go away. That's it. Fun. Now, this is the points that you have covered is all about the physical and the artistic aspect. Now, in this process of exploring this, how was your journey, or how was your experiences on the emotional side? Anything specific? Would you like to any
See,
specific?
emotional would be actually I don't know, somehow I feel there's a lot I could have done as a child.
Okay, sorry to cut you.
Yeah.
Just to put it more specific, because once I was listening to the interview by one of the great actresses, Meenakshi Sheshadri. Okay, now she's no more into acting now. She's already settled in US, but she is also a classical dancer. Okay, she's an excellent, brilliant Bharatanatyam classical. And with that, in an interview, she mentioned that she took dance and she grew along with that dance. So the emotional aspect there was because she explored herself in the dance mudras, or in the dance in whatever this thing she did. Now, the reason why I'm asking you here is because since you are exploring your own self, your own portrait, so definitely as an artist, you also grow with that portrait of yours. So I would like to know that aspect. So with that aspect, I'm asking if you have some experiences you could share with that.
So that is probably most of the women are like that. I don't know whether I should, I don't want to add gender here, but also, even if you want to remove gender from you as an artist, because I don't think women are women artists, male artists, so artist is an artist. But when it comes to the emotional aspect, yes, for maybe being a woman myself, I can understand that, you have everything is you're possessive of every thing that you're doing. You react to every situation in a different way, and somewhere you're sensitive towards everything. Every artist is sensitive, I agree, but I think for a woman, they look at it a little out of the box, or a little even more sensitive. Like, for example, it's not chalta hai, hota hai kabhi kabhi, and that's not the attitude for a woman artist. I mean, again, I repeat, women artist, I'm not gender differentiating, but when you say that women and men are totally biologically different, then we are different emotionally also. So when you look at the emotional aspects in my work, it's all, every element there, except for the Ajanta Ellora. I don't want to get Ajanta Ellora because that's very recent now, and it is something to do with a decorative element. But when I look at all those elements that I'm using there, I'm only looking at how beautiful my childhood was. How many people are lucky to have their childhood so beautiful? Yeah. I mean, I was lucky. So people keep saying, there are some comments where so much of self-portrait, aren't you bored? No, I'm not bored. And because I'm not bored, I'm painting that. And elements of these kinds will be coming on and off, because, for everyone, I'll tell you, Vasanji, there's one thing. If you have a very wonderful childhood, you'll be a wonderful human being altogether. I mean, it's very important to have a very good childhood, because you won't be a problem to the society. Not that all those people who are problematic in society have a bad childhood. I wouldn't want to get into that controversy. But I believe that good children, have a very good, who have a very good childhood. As in, no, I'm not talking about lavish. Not that.
It's a happy childhood.
Happy childhood is a very strong point for any grown-up person. They go back to that childhood where, there are a lot of memories. And these are those emotional memories that are as strong elements in my work. That includes monkeys, that includes dragonflies, that include flora, fauna, design, everything. I was in that, and that is just a major part of my work, It is not about decoration here. Decoration is again another part of it. I'm talking about those elements. Dragonflies are so, whenever I see that, I go back to the childhood. And childhood has lots of, again, connected memories. It's all a linked thing. So it's this growth, actually. So that is only the experience I can share here.
Yes, I mean, and now what you said is correct. And regarding the gender aspect, I would just like to add one more point. The reason why I find this very interesting with women artists compared to men artists, there is a gender element there. Definitely. Yeah. The reason is because they are different. Men and women are different. And one of the aspect of what I find in women artists are, if at all you see the research things, they say women are emotionally intelligent. And another aspect of women is the nurturing attitude. Now, these two things, the entire emotional chemistry becomes totally different, and with that the expression becomes totally different. So that is the reason why, if at all you see, these two elements, they can add lot of value to your visual language. So that's what makes it more interesting for me also to observe and to know what was that experiences with those women and all. Okay.
Yes.
Coming back to the next question is like, see, when I see your paintings, it's like it's a good combination of realism. There is some good element of realism. There is some good element of symbolism. But at the same time, there is some a beautiful touch or a beautiful ingredient of surrealism. Okay, because you have worked with such huge size works, like for example 4 feet by 6 feet or something, like
8 by 12, 8 by 12,
and all. Such huge portraits, making such huge portraits is a bit of a surrealistic. And especially when on the cheeks and all, when I see that a couple of your paintings, there are monkeys flying around on the cheeks and the foreheads of and all, which like, now that is one surrealistic element, because usually a woman would like to have a flower on a cheek and not a jumping monkey on the cheek, like, it's like, so how do you can you throw some light, or can you tell us something about
see here, when I do this kind of thing, I don't look like, I mean,
sorry to cut you. Basically I am trying to understand your the visual language or the expression that you're trying to make. So how these three elements constitute to make your visual language?
So coming to your previous sentence, you said women also have this nurturing attitude, no? So I would want to take it back to your question now, surrealism. Well, I didn't look at it like that, but I looked at it somewhere where the face is like the earth. Okay. And most of my work have lush, a lot of hair. As it is, as a woman, I'm losing a lot of hair. So the attitude to have my portrait, lot of hair is, the hair is like the jungle. And the thick hair, you have, and that jungle also has a lot of monkeys peeping in, peeping out, like a home, comfortable home for these animals, where today you don't have. Where these poor animals go, they're tested in labs and sent out. Some of them are just wandering near dustbins and all that. But I, as a portrait, I am a home to all these, where I grew up. So where I grew up, I also had monkeys during my childhood. They were tested in some labs, and then they would come into this campus where I stayed, had a lot of wilderness, overflowing dustbins, garbage and all. So in the terrace, you have these monkeys pulling the clothes of the dried clothes on the hanger and all that. So anyway, coming to that, to this surrealistic attitude, yes, I agree with you. If you look at it from that point, is because I look at the woman as, I wouldn't say earth, but the mother, who has long hair. And her hair is so bushy that it houses birds. Some of my works, my drawings had this woman throwing up her hair like that, and lots of birds flying out. So I have a drawing like that. So where, you have these birds, dragonflies, monkeys, elephants, all having a comfortable, secure home. Her hair is a home. Her hair is like a jungle. And then you have all that, the cheeks are like the playground, where the monkeys are playing, gossiping, pulling each other. And, I have that, I regularly wear this, dupatta, no? So I have these, dupatta is like the river. Okay. And in that river, you have these Ajanta women picking up, what you call lotus leaves and lotus flowers, and doing all those, ladies things and all that. So basically, if you look at it, it is a surrealistic attitude that I have. Yes. Because a huge face is housing so much of so many animals, protecting them, and they're enjoying her space. So this is what it is actually.
That's an excellent explanation, observation, when you say like you have something, the realistic part, the realism, the symbolism of the forest or the mother earth, everything. The surrealism is something to imagine monkeys jumping on the cheeks. Okay. all this thing, but this is so much natural. This is so much psychological. This is so much, what do you say, a blooming experience, something which buds and blooms naturally. Now, amidst all this, Ajanta symbols or Ajanta images, these are on the rocks, these are man-made, and these are decorative elements. Now, suddenly from such a natural, budding, blooming concept, and adding these decorative stone, artificial man-made elements. Now, how did they come into the picture? How did that happen?
That happened because I started teaching history of art. And this Ajanta women are not from the Jataka tales. Of course, they are from the Jataka tales in terms of their figure. But I narrate them in my own style. I look at how would it be if these Ajanta women are actually picking up lotus and decorating themselves with them. It is not, the figures are from the Jataka tales, the Ajanta figures are from Ajanta, but they are actually a part of my storytelling. They're doing they are elements of my storytelling, as in my narration. I want a woman sitting there. She could also be sitting like this, which is not there in Ajanta, but I would want her to sit like that. I'm looking at her as a individual decorating my painting. She's decorated Ajanta walls. Now she's decorating my painting in my story. She's weaving she's a part of my story, narration. Correct. So they are just there. From there, I borrowed them here, and I'm telling my story using them. I'm doing that. That is the intention of having them there.
True, I understand that. My only curiosity is, when you had so much of natural elements like the fireflies, like the animals, like the birds and everything, such natural elements to express that beauty or the aesthetics, what made you get these elements to decorate something which is on a...
Yes, that is a decorative element, I agree. Yes, that's a decorative element, I agree. But I always loved the figure, as a woman. I am very boldly saying that I love the figure of an Ajanta woman. You have them explained in the movies also. In Telugu songs, you have describing the heroine as an Ajanta figure. True. And Ajanta women also wore, I think, Pochampalli or Ikkat kind of clothes. So again, then it comes to drapery here. So I do a lot of Ikkat clothes for these Ajanta women. And then they're so beautiful. Actually, you look at all the paintings of the walls across the country in their prehistoric and the later phase of, not the prehistoric, but the later phase during the Bagh paintings or whatever. You find the Ajanta women so beautiful. So here I am celebrating beauty in my face. So they come back and they're a part of history. My childhood is also a part of my history. So this history is India's history. I want to take it into my painting as a part to enhance the decoration, to enhance the beauty. And then I would give them elements like elements which aren't there on the Ajanta walls. For example, holding a huge lotus leaf with lots of lotus, some falling and some other one picking up. And then they are talking to each other. So I am reliving their story. They were a part of Ajanta, the Jataka tales. But I want them to be a part of their own story, women gossiping, the Ajanta women gossiping. I'm doing a little different playing a narrative there.
So can we say that it's a visual drama wherein two elements or two roles, like your personal experience and some indigenous culture, are blending together?
Yes, yes, perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. Okay. Now, how much has you said that your father is a writer, is a poet.
Yes.
Now, literature. See, every form of art has different forms of expressions. Okay, be it performing art, be it listening art, be it literature, be it poetry, be it visual. Now, if at all we see in your case, your visual expression, whereas your father or your family's background is about literature. Okay. Now, these are two different aspects. For example, if I say and the apple is sweet. Okay. Now, as a painter, you can draw apple, but you cannot draw sweet, because sweet is from literature. Okay. Whereas apple, you can visually draw apple. It's like, okay, like Aishwarya Rai is beautiful. You can draw Aishwarya Rai beautiful. No, beautiful is from literature.
It's emotion, no? It is a kind of a
It's like those are all expressive words from emotion. I mean, from literature now. So my question would be like, I would be curious to know how much of these literature aspects or these poetic things how much have they influenced you or inspired you in your visual language, in creating your visual language?
Yeah, so I would put it in short by saying that I always, okay, now before I come to my father's poetry, I also studied history of art. So I saw a lot of Mughal paintings, Persian paintings, all designed with those with their either Urdu text or Persian text, which is the border of the Mughal Persian paintings. And so I loved text always in my work. I always use text in my work. There was a work called www.gossipingmonkeys.com. It was a satire. It was not a URL, but it was a satire to the society of how people gossip and all. So using text, you have street art, using text in art. So all these things where you see lots of streets where you have street art and then they have the text also there, which accommodates as elements to the work. Now coming to my father's poetry, I had done an 8 feet by 12 feet work. It's a diptych work of 2 portraits and Ajanta and all that. It's in the airport, Hyderabad airport today, which can be seen there. And that had my father's poetry on one side, and one side I had my own poetry written. So it was a little poetry on the mother. So on the left side, and my own little poetry on the work. So these 2 poetries, I included my dad's poetry, and then I had written his name down there also. And then on the other side of the portrait, the other portrait had my little, poetry and my name. So I used his text, his poetry to accommodate as elements. I use them only as elements. They might not have direct meaning also. 1. 2, there was another poet called Gopal Honnalgere. So Gopal Honnalgere's work on mother, on Sita, when she says that her bones are aching, she says, Amma, she says, whenever we are hurt, we say, Mama, Amma, that way. So what comes from our mouth is Amma. So that Amma is Sita's mother. Sita's mother also goes back and says her mother. So it goes back. So I had done one work where Gopal Honnalgere's poetry on mother again. Somehow, I don't know, women, mother, everything comes all, even if they're not mothers, it's all coming there as nurturing attitude. So all that using poetry as text, but not directly, indulging in the work is what I do. I use text.
Yeah. I understand you use them as forms, but I'm asking you is like how reading of those literature texts or those things, how much have they helped you, influenced or inspired you to create your visual language?
It has. That's how you have, my father's poetry probably must have indirectly also, or maybe directly influenced my work, because his poetry can be on a spider or on an animal, or maybe a small ant that is trying to root its way into something. So for children, he's written 9 books, 9 stories, 9 volumes of poetry for children, so that it's understood by children. So these things again, all these elements that are there in his work are there in my painting as well. Somewhere where I've inspired with his attitude towards being a simple poet, where everyone can understand what he wants to say. A child also, see, children love poetry. I mean, there are very understandable poems for children or nursery rhymes and all that. But there are poets who want to go down to that simplicity, which is very difficult to do for a poet, and write for children. Any storybook written by any author for children is very difficult to do, because you have to convince the child. A child is very intelligent. So how do you convince them? You have to relearn. You have to redo everything. You have to become a child to understand from the child's point of view, which is very tough to do. Because Picasso himself said, see, it took 50 years for him to paint like a child. So that means that, it is so difficult and challenging. So that is one very important point that has influenced me. If I have to, paint those elements on my canvas, I listen to my father's, the best part about my father's journey and mine was his friends would come home. I would be sitting in the discussion. They discuss about some people whom I don't understand. But today I understand them so much. It's very important to get influenced by someone who wants to say simple things, but at a certain point you don't understand. But what I saw in my father's literature was, for children, if he had to write the book, he has to come down like a child. In that intelligence he has to write. It's very difficult to do that because a child is very smart. A child has so many questions. You have to deal with all those questions. You just can't run away by writing something and just saying, okay, this is for you. So as well, it's so difficult to paint when you have to say something about your childhood. So all these things are like a cluster and of thought processes. Mine may be visual.
The most challenging part there is, more than relearning, it is unlearning.
Yeah.
To unlearn a lot of things, and then that is a huge challenge there.
Yes.
Now, if I see the second dimension, this is one dimension where you have your father inspiring or influencing you in terms of literature. But on the other hand, if I see your husband, even he too is a painter. Now, even he too works on animals, especially the buffalo series. So if at all I see you and him, once again it's like earth elements. Once again it's all about nature. It's all about animals. It's all about something with. But if I see the two distincts there, like his compositions, his colors are very rustic, very what do you say? It's very a tribal like thing. Very indigenous, although it is, but at the same time yours is very decorative. It's like, compared to his paintings, your paintings are loud. Your paintings are more decorative. Your paintings are more colorful. Your paintings are more like, it's like more celebrative, whereas his is very cultural, very tribal like. Now so how is it now? Two things here, like how do you see your paintings, your visual language with respect to him? And how has your experience been with dealing an artist as a husband at home? Like, how do you think
so? We basically, going back to what I said, we are what we are is on a canvas. So I am a totally different person when compared to Bharat. I am more intricate. The way even my day-to-day life also is I'm very possessive of every little thing I have. My space is very neat. My space is very decorative. The way I pile up my entire books are very neatly piled. My father used to teach us in the when we were kids that, even if the power goes, you should know where your scissors or where the candle, where the matchbox is in the dark.
Correct.
So that thing has, he's been insisting that since my childhood, that my every space in my day-to-day, even in the studio space or wherever I'm working, is all very neatly kept. I like to decorate my little stuff. It's not only about the painting, it's about who you are. My apron is there. But I can never imagine Bharat using an apron. I can never imagine it. But I can never imagine painting without an apron.
True.
So Bharat says sometimes I don't feel like taking a bath and then painting, because I am actually without taking bath I paint better paintings. But for me, I can't think of myself not taking a bath and sitting to work. So two different attitudes completely. Mine is more decorative just because of my attitude. I also said that I also do a lot of bold work, a lot of pen drawings. But in all that attitude, you see that I'm very particular about the color that I'm using, how much of color I'm using. Bharat is not like that. He just pours a lot of color and lots of colors get wasted. For me, I'm very particular about how much color I'm using. So every little detail makes you as an individual. So every artist is different. Mine, I had never got influenced with his work. He has not got influenced with my work. We are so different with each other. Even our day-to-day life has not been, I'm not able to influence him and saying, be neat.
Okay.
I'm not able to do that. So we are two different things. Our attitude, our upbringing, everything is so different that it has been there now. We are two different elements altogether.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. I mean, that was an interesting. Usually with couples, artist couples, I always try to find. I mean, I'm curious to know how their spaces do they accommodate. Are they get Do they get invaded? How do they get influenced, inspired? You know, anything, whatever it is, whatever
Yeah.
it is. But I'm always curious to know, because two artists share their life and live together under one roof, and sharing so much of other bondings as well. So I would just like to know, I'm always curious to know how those other bondings influence art. That's a whole
Mm.
thing. Now, all done with it, but the most curious point of me about your paintings is the psychological aspect.
Mm.
Now, when I see your paintings, of course, it's artistically, it has all the realism, all the symbolisms are realism. That's fine. Aesthetics, beautiful. Content, excellent. Concept wise, you're exploring yourself. So, but the another hidden psychological aspect is about the, uh, you know, painting portraits is exploring yourself. Now, artistically, when you do it, you draw, you paint, you think, you explore, you feel. Everything is, and it is a journey. It is a process. It is not something which happens at a fraction of a time, at a drop of a hat. It doesn't happen. Now, the same concept nowadays, you see, after this invention of this mobile coming to, we have this selfie aspect. So selfie also is an aspect which explores self-portrait, whereas painting also. Now, as I've told you, there are many artists who have explored or who have done their self-portraits, but haven't explored themselves as a body of work. For example, like how I find it with Frida, this thing, or how I find it with Egon, who was there. Like, they literally painted themselves on the canvas for the whole entire life, and that entire expression was that. So here we see we have technology, we have art, we have something which the machine does, here something which the mind and hand does. Okay, now, of course, there are two different aspects, because one basic thing what I always say is, like, for example, a camera, it captures or arrests a subject, whereas a painting gives freedom or releases the same subject. Okay, so selfie, I find it more sort of a bit of what do you say, a decreased self-esteem. Like, so you see, even on Facebook, if you find like people taking a lot of selfies, it's basically the self-esteem is a bit low. They're always trying to, they need a lot of assurances every day. It's like, and maybe attention seeking, like this way. But whereas it comes to painting, it's more sort of an what do you say, it's an a space where you explore yourself. It's like, okay, selfie is like very rebellious. You're trying to rebel, you're trying to, like, you know, you're loud, you're like, you know, look, I'm here. Whereas in a painting, it's more sort of, it's not rebellious, it's empowering yourself, it's exploring yourself. It's like, you know, you're accommodating yourself in the nature, just like how every other element, like for example, a flower, a bird, they all accommodate in there. They all sing, they all bloom, but they accommodate. They are very much the same. Now, these two aspects, now, more than technological, it's more sort of psychological aspect. That's what I found. So one side you have selfie, one side you have self-exploration portraits. Now, how do you find, what is your experience? How do you find with these two aspects?
See, if you look at, I'll be talking from an art point of view, because my definition now, for when you look at selfie in one side and self-portrait in the other side, selfie, I'm not doing this, okay, this one difference, this one different, I'm not doing this. I'm just giving you my point of view that may be agreed and agreeable or disagreeable also. Selfie has a little narcissist tendency, in
True.
terms of, you know, wherever you go to some dam, you go, and there's so many deaths with selfies also, to be out of the box. So
True.
you go and you want to show this, you want to show the social media that, see, I'm here now. See, I have gone to this place. See, I'm with this hero. See, so it's that CC reassurance, as you said, that I'm there. And then in selfie also, you have the tendency to, give a pout and turn. Many people turn on this side because the front face doesn't look nice for many. So that's the tilt that you give,
To be honest, I'll tell you that is so annoying. Whenever I find some people doing this way and giving a selfie, it's so annoying too. But anyway.
So people have understood that selfie looks nice only when you're in the 3/4 angle side.
Correct.
Neither you have the portrait side nor the front. But when I do my portraits that had come long before the selfie attitude, mine is more so like a narration, of my own self. I wouldn't want to waste my entire time drawing the entire body. Probably I might do it in future because I did a lot of full figure drawings previously during my lithography days. But then the attitude of drawing the portrait is with that attitude where every day I see myself in a mirror, and today I might have a pimple or a rash, or my eyes might be swollen because of too much of tiredness and lot of sleep. But I wouldn't want to put all that in my work, maybe because of the attitude that, yes, see, I want to narrate something, and whatever is coming on my face, whatever elements are coming, pictures, monkeys and hair, and maybe beetles, and maybe later lot more things, that elements which I don't know what is in store for me in my thought process, is all the thoughts that are there. It's like a kind of a X-ray thing that is going on the face, Whereas in, the selfie thing is a little bit of a teenager attitude. Teenagers, bache, and they want your face to look beautiful and all that.
Rather than a teenager, I would say immature.
Yeah, that behavior where you have these kind of things, that self. But here it is, self-portrait is a narration of my mind. It's a narration of my emotional attitude towards the society. It needn't be only beautification. It's also sometimes satirical. When I say www.gossipingmonkeys.com had a lot of satire in that one URL sentence, where you have lots of people gossiping, and monkeys were actually the symbolic representation of the society, pulling each other's leg and doing a lot of backstabbing attitude. That was why monkeys were used. Poor things, they're very cute animals, but I had used it as a satire. So that was the symbolic attitude I had towards. So this is the difference I see. I am here showing my self-portrait with my mind that is there going on, and my face is the index of my mind. That is the attitude. Whereas in selfie, what happens is that I am here, you go put it on the Facebook, and 10 people know that where you are,
True.
But the painting is enjoyed, it's a narration. It's it's a different thing altogether.
True. A selfie will tell you where you are, but in a painting will tell you what's the experience.
Who you are, what is happening in your mind, what I want to tell them, and all that. Yeah.
Interesting. That's a very interesting aspect. When you explore your self-portraits. Now, when I see your path traveled, like since childhood, or when I see your body of work, when I see your qualification, your PhD, your thesis, everything. So on one side, you have a huge content. You have a good flowing experiences. But on the other side, you also are an academician. You are the HOD for Hyderabad, the College of Fine Arts at
Painting
Hyderabad.
department,
Painting department. So you are constantly or every day in touch with the Gen Next.
Gen Z, they're called now.
Whatever it is. It's like, but they are the next generation coming in front of. So when I see you, you're at a nice middle point, or at a point where you have seen your past, where you have seen your childhood, where you have seen the things. And at the same time, you can see the future also, because you're in touch with students every day. You know how they think, what they think.
Yes.
And how do you find this? Two extreme aspects.
Well, I belong to the old school of thinking. So lots of problems still, I have with my students, where, it's their thought processes. We think that children are very fast. Yes, they're fast in some terms. But to understand their teacher, they're very slow. Whereas when we were students, we understood what our teacher wanted us. Probably our teacher must have thought that we are slow. So in today's term, I somehow would want to convey through this, through a message, probably through your channel, that, there is no time. Or maybe if you think that, okay, I don't want to do anything, I'm relaxed, I want my own, let me take my own time, fine, that is your attitude. But for students, there is so much in the opening. When we were students, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have people who invited us for camps. Today, the today's generation students are so lucky that they have lots of people wanting students works. There are lots of exposure, there are lots of openings where you say, yeah, this is a students camp, students printmaking camp, you have a lot of mural camps, you have lots of people who come and say, look, I'm giving you some remuneration, please come and paint my wall. We didn't have anyone doing that. There was no opening at all. And maybe it was even worse for the, back then generation, our seniors and our teachers and all. But that struggle, was so sweet. It was not sweet when we were struggling, but today when we're looking at that nostalgic struggle, it is actually that struggle which put us here. True. And I want students to understand this struggle term. It's not a negative term. It's a term where, it is very important you struggle to understand what you're doing. Unless you don't understand where you are, why you are there, and what are you painting, why you should paint, why have you chosen this field, it will be very difficult. That this thing I keep telling my students also. They have everything in the offing. They have their plate. They have everything. It's like a cake with icing, cherry, everything. But they don't want to eat it. They don't want to have it. They don't want to welcome that fact that today's generation is a very lucky, powerful generation where you have internet. Now online, so many things happening online, seminars, conferences, attend it. Learn how to, talk. People know how to talk, they have vocabulary, they have everything, and we are there to inspire them. But there are many students who are very laid back, and that attitude wasn't there earlier. So as you go behind generation to my dad's generation, they all struggled because the opening, the the offers and all was very, very, very limited. So when your offers are limited, you struggle more and you achieve. But when you are having lots of those things in your surrounding, you don't want to choose. This is the sad part of today's generation. Of course, not all, please, because I know I'd gone to recent art camps and all. I saw very good students trying to help the master, trying to become apprentices, trying to learn, and understanding what is happening in the art field, present, trying to open up to today's art scene. There are things that are happening within students, but a lot of chunk of students are just helplessly watching when there's so much in the offing, actually. So this is a message as a teacher that please just open your mind, which is very important, and go for whatever possible, things are there around you, and work hard. How many students paint, or draw 10 drawings a day? It's very important to be, you're already skillful, so you are in art. But how do you open up to thinking, thinking differently? You have to think. John Berger's book, Ways of Thinking, or Ways of Seeing, is very important to read, where actually the artist looks at everything differently. And our student to look at something differently is so difficult, so challenging. But unless they start creating their own open mind into that journey, it's very difficult. So I keep telling this every day in the classroom or in the studio. It's very important to be open-minded, because you can't shut yourself and say, yes, this is, I want to be like Van Gogh, so I'm like, no, that's crazy. Actually, True. It doesn't work.
True. I do agree with you, because there are a couple of points here also, which even I have observed, that they say that the generation is fast. They are fast only in some things, not in everything. They think they are smart. No, I don't think so, because I find back our time, people were more street smart, smarter than the common sense aspect was very strong.
Correct.
The reason why I find that is because this is a very generic, vague statement that I'm making, does not imply to everyone. But by and large, I see, because one of the important aspect what I saw is that the generation has lost the habit of reading. So there is no what do you say? Their analytical skills are very poor because everything is ready-made information. If they want to know something, all they have to do is just hit Google specific. That's it.
Yes, yes.
Whereas in during our time, like if I wanted to find one information, I had to go through that book basically to find out what it was and all. So the way how they analyze, how they observe, how they feel, experience that thing has become so much ready-madely available. So I find their the strength or the stamina of their intelligence a bit
Limited.
limited.
Yes.
It's not that. So I always like take that opportunity to tell students saying that read, because that is something which gives you a stamina. Just like how you jog, you go to the gym, that gives you stamina to the body. Reading gives a stamina to your intelligence, to hold that information.
Correct.
Yeah. And but hota hi rahega, aisa chalta rahega. I think our time also,
as you said, it's very important, Vasanji, to be a good avid reader. Lots of ideas come in, you get influenced, your work, like how we travel, artists travel a lot. Why do you travel? You get lots of elements, lots of experiments can be, visualized, and your works keep changing. So it's very important for students to do a lot of reading, traveling. It's important, actually.
No, the biggest drawback that I find with this, or the biggest problem that I find with the generation, is they are living life with the borrowed information.
Right.
Very, very much of their own. For example, it's like, और उनका जो भी art भी करना है उनका, they are like, okay, 10 अलग-अलग आर्टिस्ट से एक कॉन्सेप्ट चोरी करेंगे, एक कॉन्सेप्ट लेंगे, इससे लाइन लेंगे, इससे फॉर्म लेंगे, इससे कलर लेंगे, उससे लेंगे, and then they try to, it's not something which they try to explore. बहुत कम आर्टिस्ट ऐसा होता है, there are some good, but somewhere ऐसा है. But anyway, that's the way how maybe life turns that way. And is there any specific thing that you want to mention about your art, maybe which you haven't touched, something which you feel that's important? Is there anything?
Well, one very important thing which I would not want to tell, myself, but I would want to just share it, that I've been telling that in this interview before also, that, something like elements there for a long time. For example, all those elements that I've been painting for a long time probably will be there for quite some time to come now, till I really think that now okay, I'm done with my childhood and I am not going to go back also, you never know. But my works in the bolder style don't have these elements again, by the way. They're only my bolder works, which I will share with you, are all those playing with textures and playing with spaces and giving a collage effect. And then when it comes to drawing, then lots of detailing in terms of elements. Again these flora fauna come in with decorative styles and all. The faces are changed, they're no more the same faces that you see in the so there are 3 or 4 parts of me which are clubbed in different spaces in different mediums, which actually is a little tricky to answer, is because, see, I'll tell you, it's simple. When we are in a party, we are different. When we are at home, we are different. When we are in our comfortable spaces, we are different. When we are in front of someone, we are different. So probably this attitude of me, this is my attitude. So this attitude of me is coming in different. So on a paper, my visual dialect is different. It's a visual dialect. My portrait dialect is different. But when it comes to canvas, that dialect is different. When it comes to printmaking, so my dialects are different when it comes to different workspaces. That's why in certain, suppose in a workplace, my work would be small, but in a studio, it would be a large work. So it again depends. This is my personal attitude, which probably any artist would say okay, or maybe would agree or disagree again. But my works are different in terms of visual dialect on different spaces. It's not the same. You won't have the same portrait which is there. You find on the canvas the same as on the paper. On the paper, I explore it in a different way. The attitude is just like this, as I said. When I'm outside, I'm a little different. I may be the same person, but the attitude towards people are different. In the same way, my canvas and my thought process is different on different spaces. This is what I just wanted to include.
Yeah, I do agree with you, because when I see your paintings, for me, each canvas is a play. Even though it is like one of the unique things what I observed in your paintings is, even though it is a body of work of the of a series of a thing, yet every canvas has its individual play. It's an individual visual drama. I think we can enjoy. There is a two-tier pleasure or enjoyment in. So as a series, also we can enjoy watching, viewing your paintings. Individual also, if there is a pleasure, there's a fun in that. So good. It's like I think I've taken a lot of time of yours.
It's a pleasure, because I hope students are listening to this. See, this actually is very important for students also, because a master's journey or an artist journey, when you look at Picasso, when you look at Van Gogh, you have that feeling, wow, what a life they must have led. Or Michelangelo, just imagine those days. Just imagine, we are on a, probably, I don't say luckier, but you have so many things there. You want to know how, see, I'm not comparing our space of work to that of Van Gogh, Michelangelo. There they had to remove the dead bodies and study the anatomy, where here we already have everything here. So lucky we are. Then they never they couldn't study planets. Today we have all the planets. We know that there might be some other Milky Way somewhere else. So we have so much of information. Information. Let's use it. This is for students. Use, explore, expose yourself to different uncomfortable situations. Otherwise, you can't become an artist. Of a thinking artist is very important. You have to be a thinking artist. You can't be stagnated. So this is a message to students from your channel, that be a thinking artist. Is very important to do that. Be open-minded. You can't shut yourself. You can't be an artist if you're closed. You can't create. Yeah.
Just to add one point to you, whatever you said, what you said is perfectly right. Just to add one more point to those students is, like, whenever I speak to most of the students or anyone, they give all examples of European painters, Western painters. They know who Picasso is. They know who Paul Cézanne is. They know Claude Monet. They can tell this thing. But when it comes to Indian painter sculptures, they have no idea, no clue.
No idea, yeah.
Right?
Because one has to read, you see. Yeah.
I think that is something which is very, now, if at all you ask about Indian painters, they have like very few names they know. They know Hussein, they know Souza, Raza. That's it. Some 5-6 people who they right. I was very surprised to see that one of the art historians or one of the art that person did not have information or data about Indian portrait painters. Himalaya. So about Indian sculptures, about, for example, so somewhere that is one I always feel that about our Indian painters are Indian, because you see, the advantage with us is what you said is, like, we have a huge treasure of information right from the scriptures time. Any form of art you take abstract, you take realistic, you take landscape, you take surrealism, you take creative, you take any form of art that is available in our scriptures, in our any form, this thing. For example, you just take Dashavatara, it has everything in that.
Yes.
You take, you want modern art, you want abstract art, everything is there. But for some reason, for all these, we bank on Western information rather than our own. So I would always encourage our students and the artists in India to, you don't have to look outside. Everything is within us. If you can go back to your scriptures, if you can go back to your Vedas, if you can go back to your own culture, own tradition, the practices at home, your family, your ancestral, whatever they've written, you'll find a lot of answers there only within. You'll find a lot of inspiration and a lot of things. We don't have to go outside. Anyway, that's my observation, which I always
yes, you're absolutely right. Even ancient scriptures, the Pala manuscripts, and lots of attitude, the Indus Valley civilization, all that had, we already were very much, the Nalanda school, university, we're all much ahead. The problem with I felt as an artist, the problem with our India also, that we have not been able to document, because our documents were in these palm leaves, and paper wasn't there then. So because of that, we probably had otherwise we are much advanced than the Western culture.
And when it comes to visual art, especially visual art, the documentation has been in different forms. For example, the mention is there in poetry, the mention is there in music, dance, something and all is there. Yes, but very specifically, like how the Westerners have done, it's not there. That is one drawback. I understand. But see, for example, our civilization, our Indians, or especially when you see, I always mention it as, if at all you see, I said there is no competition for a Hindu chisel. The sculptures, how they have done it,
right.
And I proudly tell that there's no worry, because we were if at all you see, our ancestors, they had that skill and that ability, that capability, where they could cut things from rock and get out the beautiful things.
The best examples are the Ramappa temple here in Telangana, Warangal, the Belur Halebedu temples, where you have
today when I see the way students copy, or for example, how they take print on the canvas, everything digital drawing is done, they take print on the canvas and they paint. Such a malpractice. I find, like, look, man, just go back and see what our ancestors used to do, and how skillful, how strong, how authentic we were. And look at the cheating and malpractice that's been done. It's like, so I think it's like, we always people like me and you should try our level best to leave a message saying that get back to your roots, get back. There is everything. You don't have to go back.
There's one more thing I would also include. I don't know why I'm looking at it from the student point of view. When we have exams, this is a very, very basic thing which I want to also say, that when topic or title is given for that composition, I'm talking on the bachelor's degree program, they immediately go to the cell phone and see, okay, how to draw this. Use your mind, use your eyes to see. Your eyes can capture so much, your brain can just have so many elements and compositions. You don't have to go to the internet, you have to create, you start looking at things differently. It's very important to do that.
Borrowed information ki aadat lag gayi hai.
So as a teacher, I'm looking at myself as a teacher right now to send this message through you, that it is very important you try to create your own. You can't have someone's baby sitting in your house. You should have your own baby.
Correct.
It's very important.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you very much, Dr.
My pleasure.
Sharing your time and experience. It's been, I think I took a little more time than expected and told, but it was nice talking to you. And friends, viewers, I'm sure that you have enjoyed this interaction. Do let us know what you think about this. Like, share, comment, and subscribe Art TV for this. And thank you very much, Dr. Preeti, to be with us.
My pleasure, Vasanji. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.